Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Brooklyn. Wow. So I wanted to just share a little bit about Philadelphia because I know people want to get on and get moving. I come out of a state and a city that there's just two statistics that you got to know. One, Philadelphia is the poorest large city in the country, with more than a quarter of our residents living in poverty. And two, that we live in a state where the funding gap between the poorest school districts and the wealthiest districts is the largest in the nation. And those two statistics alone, poverty and inequality, are ultimately at the heart of what all of us in this room and across the country fought for and are fighting for before November 8th and today. I come out of communities, immigrant communities, public education communities that have had to fight tooth and nail for their own existence, that face up against biases and stereotypes that shape the policies that determine our very lives. For us, one of the things that we understand is we don't have a hotline to City Hall or to our state legislature, and especially not now in DC. But that means that we have had to organize. We've always had to organize for visibility and voice. We've had to organize when our Chinatown lost half its land and a third of its housing to so-called economic development. We had to organize when the state cut $1 billion out of our public schools and shut down 30 public schools in Philadelphia alone, and parents had to stand up. We organized for visibility and voice. We organized for power, and we organized because we know one thing. For our communities, we only get what we are organized to take. And that we only get what we're organized to take. And that is the reality of spaces like this here in Brooklyn, in Philadelphia, in Austin, Texas, and all across the country. But I'm gonna share 4 things about what the resistance is looking like in Philadelphia, because there are amazing things that can happen, even in a city like mine, that has had to walk itself back from times of moral uncertainty, when the path wasn't clear, when people were losing faith in our public schools. They were easy and quick to scapegoat immigrants and those who are lesser than. We did this because in these times, when things are so fractured, we have to come together. And I want to think about, on November 9th, how ready we became. I want to think about 7 women in Philadelphia who began showing up every Tuesday at the office of U.S. Senator Pat Toomey. You can boo. A Republican who claimed he would never be a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. A Republican who said giving people with pre-existing conditions health care is like trying to save a burning down house. That's the kind of Republican Pat Toomey is. But each week, these 7 women grew, and they shared until they were in the hundreds, not only outside of Pat Toomey's office in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but in multiple offices all across the state. And every Tuesday, they bring out 1,200 people all across the state of Pennsylvania to talk about what it means to fight for health care, for public education. And for a Pennsylvania that's going to look very different from what Pat Toomey says it will be. I want us to think about what it meant when public education communities, even under siege like we see today, took on, not only were we able to throw out our first-term governor, whose name I don't even actually have to remember anymore, because he's not in office. We threw him out, and we put in a governor who promised that he would put in fair funding for education. We put in the next municipal elections a mayor who promised to uphold public schools, myself, an outsider, a public school parent who was going to stand up for public education. And then we took on Betsy DeVos. Every single one of us in this room made sure that Betsy DeVos faced the most humiliating confirmation vote in the history of any other cabinet member in the United States of America. And we won't stop there. We're going to think about what it meant after the airport to go out. We got a call from the mayor. There were 5 families detained at the airport. We needed help. He called me. I'm like, I don't know. What am I supposed to do? But we put out a call. We put out a call on social media, and people responded by the hundreds. And I know you in this room respond by the hundreds every single time that a call is pulled out. But that night, we put out a call, and hundreds of people showed up at the airport. And because hundreds of people showed up, all of a sudden, Customs and Border Patrol agents who are left to their own devices trying to figure out an executive order that came out in the middle of the night started to hesitate. And then a U.S. Senator came, and then a governor came, and then state representatives came, and then an Eastern District Court judge stayed until 2 a.m. a.m. in the morning to order that those families would be stayed, and then the next day the Muslim ban fell. And thousands of us poured out into the airport, and that's how politics works. The people start, the politicians will follow, and our politics will change. And I'm going to conclude by just saying very briefly a quote by Arundhati Roy. Because for all of us in this room, people of color, women, marginalized communities, our LGBTQ community, our trans community in particular, we have fought for a long time about an empire that Arundhati Roy talks about, that we are here to lay siege to an empire. And for many of us, this is an empire that has put profits before people, that has left behind the idea of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, that have left behind the idea or promote the idea that healthcare, for example, must be a private good and not a human right. But Arundhati Roy calls us to lay siege to empire, to shame it, and to mock it with our brilliance, our humanity, our joy, and our stories. Stories that are so different from the ones we are conditioned to believe. And that's our story today, that we go out there and we lay siege to an empire that is out there, and we've got to fight back. And if you haven't been in trouble for a while, guess what? Now's the time. Thank you.